Hi everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk to you about all of the massive fantasy books on my TBR that I want to read soon. So I have about, I don't know, 15 books here to talk about. I've only chosen books that I own physically because I can see that they are huge and intimidating. Ebooks just don't really count at the moment, although off the top of my head I can think of a couple that I am definitely putting off because they are enormous. I have a problem with fantasy lately. The past couple of years I've been getting in and out of fantasy reading slumps. I don't really know why. I think it's partly to do with the intimidation because these books are enormous. They're all over 500 pages, I think. At least they look like it. While I love fantasy as a genre, I do worry that if I read these books and there's not a good payoff at the end of the book or at the end of the series, then it's going to have been a waste of my time, which does mean that a lot of fantasy books stay sat on my shelf for years because I keep talking myself out of reading them and instead reading quick thrillers that again could be a major letdown, but it doesn't matter so much because they're only a few hundred pages long, like 350 pages, and that's not as much of a time investment as getting stuck into this massive fantasy world with 600 pages to read plus more if you carry on with the sequels. So these are all, I think, starter books that I have on my TBR that I would like to talk myself into reading, but the reason I'm making this into a video is so that you guys can talk me into reading them. Please try to motivate me to start these books because at the moment I'm just kind of staring at them and putting them off because they are so huge and I want to read down my TBR this year, so I'm reading shorter books in order to do that. But I should be reading these books because I am quite excited about them. Looking at them now in this pile, I'm really hyped to read these books, but I just can't bring myself to do it. So let me stop rambling and show you the books. The first two are ones that I'm already in the middle of. I've read like 60 pages of. The first one is Malice by John Gwynne. So I started this one back in February, I think, because I can't remember why. I've had it on my shelf for ages. Everyone seems to love it, apart from my friend Angela, who's just very meh about it. And we often have similar tastes in fantasy books. So I'm not saying she put me off of reading this. I was less excited to read it after I saw her reaction. I'm 66 pages in. I'm on chapter 8, I think. And I still don't really know what this book is about. But it's 600 pages long. And so if I'm going to really get invested in it, I want to like it. Does that make sense? Because it's enormous, and it's also it's not a trilogy. There are 4 books in this series, so it's again a lot of commitment to have to read it, but I am very excited. So if you loved Malice, or if you love any of these books, tell me in the comments below so that I can get to them. Don't tell me if you didn't like any of them because I don't want to be put off. Just tell me about the ones that you did like. So next we have the Black Prism, which I am 40 pages into, 34 pages into. I'm on chapter 6, and I have to say this one was a lot easier to get into than Malice. I have more of an idea of what this one's about, and the writing style is a bit more gripping, I found. So I really like the sound of the magic system in this one, in that it's based around lights and different colours of lights and prisms. I still don't really understand it all that much because, like I said, I'm only 35 pages in. This is a massive fantasy book, but I am very intrigued by this one. And I also own books 3, 4 and 5, no, 2, 3 and 4 as hardbacks, which I got from the charity shop. This is over 700 pages. There are, what, 90 chapters or something ridiculous. So again, a massive commitment, but I do have more faith in this one than I do in Malice. So I want to read that soon. By the time this video goes up, I might have already read it, but I don't know, I doubt it. The next one I really want to read and I'm quite excited by, but I keep going back and forth, is The Emperor's Blades. I honestly have no idea what this one's about. I just keep seeing it advertised everywhere. I love the US cover, but I also have the UK one. So this one, it says, the Emperor has been murdered, which means the Empire is in turmoil. The Emperor's son has been training for the deadliest fighting force, and he hears the news and has to come back. The Emperor's daughter is looking for her father's murderer. And lastly, Caden is the heir to the Empire, and he's studying in a remote monastery. So I think it's about the siblings coming together and avenging their dad, or figuring out what's happened to their dad, and then probably figuring out how to continue with the Empire, which is a trope that I love. The siblings coming together, that is. This is just under 600 pages, so it's not the biggest one on this pile, but I am a bit intimidated just by, I guess, the size of it, and also not really knowing exactly what it's about. I don't see this one around much in YouTube fantasy book circles. Back in the day, a lot of my friends were talking about it, and a couple of friends in particular love it, but now I don't really see it too much, so I don't know. I think I'm going to love it, but I don't know, we'll see. This next one is 600 pages, and that is The Rage of Dragons. This one is on my series to read this year list. I'm convinced I'm going to love it because it's kind of gladiators with dragons, and S.A. Chakraborty loved it, so I think I'm going to adore this one as well. I think it started out self-published, and I know a lot of people didn't like the portrayal of women in this one, but it does apparently get better in the sequel. But I am wondering if the author initially wrote it as 600 pages when he self-published it, or if the editors got involved when it was being traditionally published by Orbit and bulked it out a little bit. I don't know. I do want to find out. I do want to read this very soon, and this is probably one of the ones I'm most excited for because of the gladiators part. part. But I'm also a little bit intimidated, partly because of the apparent portrayal of women being bad. Next we have one that I am so intimidated by. I don't even know if I definitely want to get into this. That is Gardens of the Moon, which is the first book in the Malazan series, which is apparently pronounced Malazan, but that sounds silly in my accent, so I'm gonna say Malazan. My partner owns the first, I don't know, 5 books in this series, and he's been reading through them again. This will be his like the 2nd or 3rd reread, and this series is apparently epic in scope and very, very complicated, but also very, very good. So I'm hoping it's going to be a good, easy writing style to get into, and I'm hoping I'm going to get very attached to this world, because that's kind of what I want from my fantasy books. This is 700 pages long, and I realise that it's like mass market paperback size, so it's not so bad. I don't love this edition, and that's kind of what's putting me off. I also think come the 2nd book, at least, I don't know about this one, but the chapters are like 50 pages long according to my partner, and I don't know if I can deal with that, and that's what's putting me off from reading this book series, because it's just so intimidating, and there's a lot of love and hype for this series, but I just don't know. Next we have one that I'm intimidated by purely because of the size, because the arc, which I got from my friend, is enormous, and that is the Jasmine Throne. You can see like the size difference in these books. That's ridiculous. I don't know why an arc has to be this big. I'm really excited to read this one. I also have She Who Became the Sun somewhere, but that's smaller. S.A. Chakraborty loves this author. I think they might be friends, or at least S.A. Chakraborty is reading Tasha's series books and really, really enjoys them. So again, I trust S.A. Chakraborty's opinions. The back doesn't really say much, so I don't really know loads of what it's about. It says it's the first book in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy. 2 women, an imprisoned princess and a servant in possession of forbidden magic, come together and rewrite their fates. I think it's based on South Asian mythology and history, so that's very exciting to me. It's just enormous, and that's like, it's bigger than my head. And that is what's putting me off from reading this one, so I'm just going to tuck that away and hopefully read it sometime soon. This next one is one that's very popular, and I do need to read it before the show comes out. That is Fire and Blood. So I have this thing against George R.R. Martin. He drives me mad. I have lost a lot of respect for him, and I know I'm not entitled to a complete series from any author. It just frustrates me that he keeps saying that the next book in the Song of Ice and Fire series will be out like this year, soon, and then it never comes. I just wish he'd be honest and be like, sorry, I've actually only written 1 chapter. I don't know what I'm doing. So I've given up on that series, but I would like to read Fire and Blood because I think I would enjoy it, because I really enjoy reading about the Targaryens, and I'm looking forward to reading a bit about the history. And there's also a lot of illustrations in this, which I think are also in World of Ice and Fire, which I also own, which is cool. It'll just break up the writing a little bit. So I'm looking forward to reading this one. Hopefully I want to get to it before the show comes out, so I can do like a full review and then maybe a reaction to the show or something. I don't know, it depends what I'm feeling like at the time, but that one's intimidating to me just because I don't know if I want to get back into the world of Ice and Fire, if I should just leave it behind forever, to be honest. This next one is another enormous one. That is The Golem and the Ginny. This one did have a sequel come out last year, around the same time a sequel to The Goblin Emperor came out, which I always associate with this book for some reason. I bought them both at the same time because they're just linked in my head to me. But this book is huge. I wasn't expecting it to be so enormous. It's 650 pages, and I just wasn't expecting it to be that long. So this one is about a golem called Chava, I think, which is basically a creature made of clay, and a Ginny called Ahmad, and that's all I know. I know that it's set in New York and that they meet each other, and that is about it. But 600 pages for that kind of storyline, I'm not sure if I'm into it, but I want to give it a try because I'm quite excited for it. This next one is one that I'm convinced I'm going to love, but it's enormous, and that is The Sword of Kaigen. This one I know has one of my all-time favourite fantasy tropes, or tropes in general, in it. I can't remember what the trope is actually called, but I will talk about it if I ever read this and do a full review. But I do want to read this one this year. It's just enormous, and the book is really freaking heavy. It's only, it's just over 600 pages, so it's not the biggest book on this pile, but it's a really heavy one because it's self-published or independently published. I think self-published. And so it's going to be really quite challenging for me to pick up and read, but I think I'm going to love it. So that's why I'm excited for this one. But I also find it very intimidating because the hype around this one is so real. I know that it's got one of my favourite tropes in it, but what if I don't like the rest of the book? That's why I'm intimidated by this one. I'm also worried that my shelf will not be able to hold it because it is quite heavy. Then we have a massive book, and it's part of a trilogy, I think, and apparently the rest of the trilogy isn't very good, and I didn't know that when I picked this one up. That is Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan. He has written better things since, I have heard, but I have heard really good things about this first book, and then the rest of the books in this series are apparently terrible. I don't know if I want to invest in this massive chonker of a book just for it to end badly. So this is over 700 pages, and I don't know if I have the commitment, but I am very intrigued by the plot, or at least by the hype that was surrounding the plot back when this one first came out, because that's the reason I bought it, because I was getting more into adult fantasy, and the hype definitely worked for some books but not for others, and I kept putting this one off because, again, people didn't really like the sequels as much as they like this one. So I'm nervous, but I also want to check out some more of his other books, and I don't want to check those out without at least giving this first one a go, because that only seems fair, and I like reading books in publication order. There's just 2 more books to go. So the first one is City of Lies, which is one of my friend Justine's favourite books. This one is about poison in a fantasy world. I don't really know much else about it. It's over 600 pages long, but I've heard that it's a very, very good book and easy to fly through. So while I am intimidated by the size, I think this is a storyline that I am going to love, and the fact that Justine loves it as well makes me very happy. I think this is a duology, but it could be a trilogy. There's definitely a sequel, I just don't know if there's going to be another one. Either way, I really want to read this one. I'm actually quite hyped for it, so maybe I'll read it soon. And then finally, finishing off with a bang, we have Oathbringer. This is only the first half, which is over 600 pages long. Then I also have the second half as well, so I think this is about 1200 pages, which is madness. I've also heard that this isn't the strongest book in the series so far. It took me ages to finish Words of Radiance, which is apparently the strongest book in the series, let alone this one. So I'm a bit intimidated by it, but at the same time I love these characters. At least I love a few of them. Still not very impressed by Shallan. I just don't really care for her, but I do love Dalinar and Cal and Adeline, especially after what happened in the second book. So I am looking forward to reading this one. I'm actually quite hyped for it, but I just need to kind of bring myself to actually pick it up and read it, because I've been meaning to for years now and I still haven't. So what I'm really looking for here is motivation and a kick up the butt to actually pick these books up, because I'm excited for them, but I just keep putting them off because, like I keep saying, they're intimidating and I could be reading other things instead, especially if the series doesn't end off well. So those are some of the most intimidating fantasy books on my shelf that I would really like to read. They're all enormous. I do have some more massive books on my shelf, but they're sci-fi or historical, so I didn't include them in this video. If you want me to do another video, then I will. In fact, I might just do it anyway, even if you don't want another video, because I like talking about these massive books and trying to encourage myself to read them, because that's what this video is all about. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of any of these books. Again, please don't put me off of reading them, because then I'll never pick them up, but tell me if you loved them, any of them. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you all in my next video. Bye.